to Dead Time with your host, Holly Faust. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dead Time Tales. Today we're welcoming Jill Shelley. Jill always has had an interest in the paranormal. When she was a young child, she had some experiences and, experiences that happened early on that fueled her passion for the paranormal. In 2010, she met a great group of people that were passionate just like her, and they formed a team called St. Croix Paranormal. The group has traveled all over the US to well known haunted locations in search of answers, and they were featured on the biography channel's My Ghost Story, and they also produced their own local cable show called Paranormal Patrol. In her travels, Jill realized that she wanted to have her own haunted location to research at, and she wanted to let other people come in to do the same. And she purchased the Boyd House in Minnesota in 2018, and in 2023 she also purchased the Masonic Lodge. So everybody say hello to Jill. Hi, Jill.
Hi, Holly. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, I am so excited. You are my first location. So I'm down, like all the firsts are happening right off the bat. Yeah, I had a cryptid person, and now I've got a location here, which I was really excited about, because I don't think that there's enough programs out there that really highlight the locations that people can go to investigate. And if they do, they kind of highlight the bigger ones, like West Virginia, Bel Air. For a long time they were highlighting the Conjuring House, and just these larger locations. And I mean, I've seen the Masonic Lodge of yours on Facebook a lot of people mentioning it. And I realized today when I started putting everything together, I'm like, oh, I know where her location is now. So, yeah. So, can you just tell us like a little bit about your journey and how you started off in the field?
Well, just like you kind of mentioned, I've always been real fascinated by it since I was a young kid. Just kind of like all the ghost stories, spooky stuff. So I just, spent a lot of time researching, watching, movies and documentaries. I'll go in the library. But then with the advent of the television shows coming along, that's when I was like, wow, you can do this. I didn't know this was like a thing. And then I ended up, meeting some people, like we said, with the same common interest. And we started out just doing private homes, businesses. And then we just started kind of reaching out and traveling to well-known haunted locations just in search of answers. And then, that's just started kind of my journey there. Just wanting my own location to make more of a connection. When you go to these places, you're only there for the 6, 8, 10 hours that you're
Right.
allotted. So you're excited if you make a connection, but to have your own location, you can make that real personal
Oh,
connection.
totally. I agree. I worked at a mansion out in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, that we were doing pretty much investigations there if not every weekend, pretty much close to it a few times a month. And I think, like, I don't know if you've experienced this at your locations, but it seems like they get to know you and they become a little bit more willing to interact with you.
Yeah, they took a little bit to get to know who I was, and they started to know who I was. This is more at the Boyd House, because one of our first few groups that came in there, one of their EVPs they captured pretty much right after they got into the house was "Where's Jill?" So
Oh, wow.
that was like their first time. Maybe their second or third group that they had come in the house without me being there. So I think it was just kind of a whole learning experience. But I spent a lot of time with the spirits at the Boyd House. We feel that the main family, so the house itself was built in 1901, but the main family that we focus on is in 1912 because they lived there the longest.
Hmm.
That would be the Eckhart family. They both passed away in the home. Two of their children passed away in the home. One was an infant, and then he was like a year and a half. He choked to death in the home. And then we have a lady in her 70s that she passed away in the home. So those are our documented deaths that we know that happened there. But
Right.
I tell you, there's a whole lot else going on there.
Oh,
Than
and
just
I've heard that from
yeah.
so many, like, even, in my area, we have a whole lot going on because there was so much that went on here back in the 1700s, and when people first started coming here and they built the fort where we live along the river. So yeah, I have noticed with these locations that, you know, it seems like when you start getting one thing here and there, you literally start like peeling back and finding more and more and more as you're going.
Right, yeah, and we, our deed goes back to the 1800s when the land was actually owned by the railroad, and then also back in the day too, the town was pretty much backed up right against the Sioux Dakota Reservation. So there's
Okay.
just a lot of stuff that probably went on that was never recorded in the books. Our house is basically adjacent from the town. It's like you can walk right over there. So back in the day, I seen pictures of it. You got your horses and your horse-drawn wagons. It's a total cowboy type town that
Right.
and it was a booming town back then. They had all kinds of things. They had billiards and hotels, and they had creameries and all kinds of things. They were huge. They had like 500 people in the town. And then now it's pretty much, it really is kind of a ghost town. There's only about 150 people in town left.
Oh,
And
wow.
two businesses pretty much running in town at this point. So it's a pretty quiet town when you, but the spirits are very restless. I will tell you, and at least in the Boyd house too.
Right. And that was the other thing that intrigued me because I have a big thing about Masons, Masonic lodges, odd fellows, those types of, secret societies that aren't really secret, but there's just a lot of mystery around them. And you get a lot of activity in the Masonic lodge.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to investigate it too much since I live a little bit farther away than I anticipated. Was not my goal when I purchased it, but I saw it and I just had to have it because I knew this was the building for me. Um, but when I first went and investigated, I got a couple EVPs. One's like I can see you, but I had gotten like a child's voice and it said body, and I thought, well, that's weird. Like, why would I have a kid's voice? This is a lodge. But now that I own it, I've been doing some more research on it, and we actually found out that this in the 1800s was the Arlington Hotel, and
Oh.
it was also used as a brothel. So, and
Oh.
it was like the second or third building, I believe, that was erected in the town. So a lot of history. It did not become the Masonic Lodge until the 1900s. So there's just a lot of different things going on at the lodge. We get a lot of people that get women there, that they get children there. I've had interaction with both men, women, and children at the lodge. So it's just kind of a hodgepodge of everything that has resided there back in the day. So we're still touching the tip of the iceberg on everything that's going on, but it points to both. Seems to point towards more to help hotel people and
Right.
Masonic people. So when we ask, like, yes, I'm a Mason, or no, I used to work here, or that kind of stuff.
That is, like, so cool. I have a fascination with that simply because I live not far from an Odd Fellows orphanage,
Hmm.
and I myself have been trying to get into that location for 25 years. And I was so angry when I found out Kaylani, the ghost hunter, and Destination Fear got in there, and they're not even from the area. And I literally, someone said, "You need to watch this. This is by you." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I've been trying to get into that location because when I first moved here, I would drive by there late at night. Now there was no power in that building, but yeah, the lights would turn on or you would see something in front. And so I became obsessed with it, and it's changed ownership multiple times, and now a new owner bought it, and I'm trying to talk him into having like a paranormal convention. Now, one question that I had for you, was there something that just triggered you, like, to really push you to get into investigating the paranormal?
Well, I guess I would say when I was younger, I always kind of, and I still am to this day, kind of sensitive as far as that. I can kind of feel that something's around me. I kind of get that, just that pickup feel. But at my grandma's house, there was always a room that I never really liked. I had that feel of there was something in there. Didn't like. I never liked playing in that room. I was particularly drawn to the closet, even though she just had a curtain over it. It wasn't like
Right.
a door, but I always just kind of felt like that's where whatever this entity was, it didn't. That's where it was hanging out. One particular night. I was sleeping in the what we called the girls' room. My parents were in a different room. I could hear them snoring, sleeping away. But I'd woke up and my back was towards the door, and I actually heard footsteps coming out of that room, walking across the hall, and stood in front of my door. And then it was almost like I could feel it like looking through me. It just is intense. But I was probably 8 or 10. I'm terrified. I'm not turning around to find out what this thing is.
Right.
And I just heard it kind of sigh and took some steps and it went back in the room. And again, my parents were snoring away, so it wasn't them. My grandma sleeps downstairs. Just casually mentioned to her in the morning. Well, I didn't casually. I was just like, "Oh my god, this is what happened," and she just nonchalantly was just like, "Oh my gosh, honey, he's just a ghost. He won't hurt you." And I was like, "Wow, Grandma doesn't really care," you know. And her and I always kind of talked about weird things anyway. We talked about UFOs, we talked about ghosts and things like that. So she was really open to that kind of thing, which is kind of cool at that age. You're not really supposed to talk about it because otherwise, I
Yeah,
think.
that is really interesting because I know a lot of people have the exact opposite. I think we all have had experiences as children that led us to want to know more. And I think, like kids as kids, I think we're more connected too because we haven't been filtered yet to not want to experience that side of things. So our minds are very open. And I hear that from so many people. Well, when I was a kid, but usually I hear the exact opposite. Well, my everybody told me I was crazy, and
Mhm,
and because I know I went through that. My mom told me that I was nuts and took me to our parish priest to try to have me exercise.
mhm.
So, I mean, I think that's pretty awesome that you did have, like, I had grandparents that would talk about it, but they had to do it behind everybody's back.
Right, right.
So, it's not something that I could sit down with my grandmother and say, "Oh, hey, I experienced." Now, my grandmother on my father's side would always say, she had a picture in her house of Jesus, and she would always say it talked to her. And, like we all thought one, she was crazy, and then two, none of us wanted to ever go near that picture. Like we would come out of the bathroom and like jump to get away from it because we didn't want to take the chance. So now have you do you have a favorite place that isn't your own that you've investigated?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few that I really really like, but I think my favorite is Edinburgh Manor, and that's in Iowa. It's just like an old poor farm, old asylum.
Oh,
It's
wow.
a lot of history there, and it's just big enough to where it's not overwhelming, you know. So
Oh, exactly. Because some of these places are huge.
yeah, and you always get something. You always get some sort of activity. We've had doors slam on us. We get really excellent EVPs, a lot of equipment interaction. My favorite is we were actually having a lot of interaction with one of the children that were there, and she was touching equipment, kind of on command and that and cue, and we were playing games and such. But then when, things started to die down, I'm like, okay, well, we're going to go to bed, so thanks for playing. And as I'm walking out of the room, we got a class A EVP of a little girl that says, I'm going to miss you. So
Aw.
it was just like, that was like one of those things. So I always drawn, I've probably been back like 4 times, never had to add any more contact with her. But yeah, just, you always get something there. It's just such a fun place to go.
I'll have to remember that. I was in Iowa once. We drove there from Pennsylvania, believe it or not, and, we went to Malvern Manor.
Oh yeah,
And
that's a great place too.
oh my gosh, well, I love Josh, and,
Yep.
I love the manor. I did a lot of historical research while I was there on the manor itself. And, I had so many experiences there. Like, that to me is one of my favorite places besides, St. Albans Asylum in Virginia.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's because we experienced so much, between what I believe was a puckwudgie upstairs, and to, like, that whatever that entity is that's down that one dark hallway that just, like, pops out like a shadow.
Yeah.
I just, I became obsessed with, and I wanna go back because that was a location that actually started calling to me before I ever even knew. Like, I had heard about it, but I had never seen photos of it. I had never heard much information about it, and I started dreaming about the White House with an offset, well, the white building with the offset porch,
Hmm.
and the offset porch that kind of faced the corner of the road, is what made it unique to me in my dreams, and someone sent me a picture of it. I'm like, "Oh." So, like, that's a place that calls to me, and unfortunately, if it wasn't so far away, I'd probably be there more.
Yeah.
'Cause it took us 2 days to get there by car. So
Yeah, if it's not that far from me. I've actually been twice to Melbourne. So yeah, we've always had great experiences every single time we've.
oh, yeah. Now have you been anywhere here on to the East Coast?
Ohio has been the farthest that we've gone. So we've done just a few places over in Ohio, and I just unfortunately cannot think of any off the top of
Well,
my
I'm
head.
trying to think. I know I've been to Madison Seminary there and, Mansfield Reformatory, which a lot of people call Ohio State. Um, but I think those are the only ones I've done in Ohio. Well, Lake Conneaut, but I think that's actually in PA,
Hmm.
the Conneaut Hotel, but it's, like, right there on the border of PA and Ohio.
Yeah, yeah, we've done the Bel Air house, or is that one
Bel Air.
Bel Air? Yeah, we've
Yeah.
done that one, and then
What did you think? I always ask people when they say they've been there, like, "What did you think of the Bel Air house?" I
we
got sick, so
we had a pretty quiet night. So, but I kind of tease my friends now because, they, we didn't really want to be by ourselves, especially upstairs, because there was all that, paranormal activity in that one back bedroom.
right.
But so I was the driver, so I went to bed earlier and I went to sleep upstairs, and I'm like, no, don't not, and everyone's like, no, we're gonna come up. We're just gonna stay downstairs for a little while. They never came up. I'm like, I woke up in the middle of the night and I'm like, nobody is up here. You guys left me up here all by myself.
I don't even think when we were there, I made it upstairs. I did make it part way down into the basement, but I couldn't. Now, when we were there was still the house that was next door,
Hmm.
and that house itself has a shady history. So I couldn't even like I would time I was a smoker, and I used to like escape places by going out to smoke. I couldn't even go out back and smoke there, because I would get sick because I was feeling the crap coming from the house next door. But I never made it upstairs, but I heard like a lot of the people that stayed there over the weekend, a couple of them actually left and got hotel rooms
Hmm.
and came back during the day. So so I always ask people because some people have nothing happen, and then other people just have an excessive amount of things happen there.
Yeah, and you'll get that too, like with my locations. You get that at any locations.
Right.
We've gone to places where it's like supposed to be so hopping, and we get there and we're kind of like, it's kind of a dud. Not that, nothing, we wouldn't get stuff, but it wasn't like all the stuff hype that was made from the building. But to me, that doesn't mean that the place is or isn't haunted. That's just the luck of the draw that night.
Oh, that's what I tell everybody because everybody always says Eastern State is like so hopping. And I have been there multiple times and got nothing.
Yeah, and a
A
place like that, you think you would.
Right, and absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. I was like, "Come on now." Like, I came all the way to Philly, which is only a few hours from my house,
Hmm.
but it was still the point that, everybody's saying how active and how, and I'm like, "Nothing." And I've never had a prison especially that I got nothing at.
Hmm.
So I kept blaming it on the people that were with us. I was like, "Maybe it's you guys, and they just don't wanna talk to you." 'Cause, I mean, we've done small prisons that are like, little county or town prisons
Hmm.
and have gotten a ton of activity. We did one up in, New York State where we literally had Class A EVPs, and all we were doing was sitting in, like, the safe room, having a conversation amongst ourselves, which it was right by solitary confinement, and we were literally getting answered as we were having a conversation amongst ourselves, and it was nuts when we listened back to the recordings.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I think that's what's great about people that have locations that they can constantly go back to, and because I think they get used to you and are more easy to interact with you. At least that's what we found when we did the Keeley Mansion. We found that they became more active with us while we were there.
Yeah, like I said, I have pretty good rapport with my spirits. I always joke that I'm the only one who shops for the dead. Um, so when we go antique shopping, I buy stuff Just always like, oh my gosh, Minnie and Fred would really like this. The kids would like this, or this would look great at the lodge. So just, I'm always kind of thinking, and even when I'm there, because I have to do the cleaning. So I
Right.
usually carry a voice recorder with me, even though I'm not actively ghost hunting. I'm usually talking to them just as I'm having a conversation with you. So I have caught EVPs while I've been talking to the spirits in retrospect to what I'm doing. So I think they do appreciate that too. So
That's what I was gonna ask you. Do you think that, that type of rapport gives you better activity? Because I know personally, I think we get better outcomes when we're not, like, trying to get them to perform on command, if we're just sitting there having a conversation.
yeah, I feel it too when we investigate. Sometimes some of the more crazier stuff is when you're not expecting it to happen. With my, like, say at the Boyd house, if I buy stuff. So recently, I knew that Fred, he was a big fisherman. He liked to fish. So we found him like an old fashioned fishing reel, just the handle part of it. And then we found like a bass fish statue. And then we brought that for him, and we put a REM pod by it, and I just put it up on the piano because that's, I kind of dedicate, that's all the stuff that we give for Fred. And then Minnie has her own shelf in the house where we put stuff that we buy her. But we put it up there, and I said, "Hey, Fred, if you really like this, just hit this REM pod up." And later, when we were just eating dinner, not even in there, that it just started going crazy. So then we came in there, and then this it kind of used it by like, "Hey, okay, is that you, Fred?" And he kind of used it with yes and no answers with the REM pod at that point. So
That's pretty cool though. Like leaving things. I don't think a lot of people think about that when, but I'm sure most people that own locations think about it a lot. I
right.
know one location, for example, that we went to, people would leave cigarettes for one of the guys because he liked to smoke.
Hmm.
And so you go up into his room and there'd be all these cigarettes up there. And I thought that was, oh, hey, that's great. People are leaving him cigarettes. And I said it'd be really freaky though if one started smoking.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, I'm always like, okay, let's see. You know, um, do you have a lot of other activity other than EVPs, or is it mostly just EVP, or do you guys actually get, other things happening?
Well, at the Boyd House, we have had doors open, audible voices. People have been touched, footsteps. We've had objects move in the house, things get knocked over. For instance, I was playing cards with them one day down in the basement, and I was told that Minnie really liked to play cards, but I had pushed a card to the edge of the table, and it wasn't hanging off in any way. It was just like right at the edge. And I asked if, they had fun tonight, if they could just push that off the table. And then about 12:30 at night, when nobody was around, that card actually went flying off the table. And we actually captured that on film. So that was pretty excited about that. But yeah, I've heard the cupboard slamming, just all kinds of racket, women talking audibly. That's at the Boyd House, and then with the lodge, we've heard a lot of footsteps. We've heard like that's all the old woodwork. So you kind of hear the doors rattle, but nothing's getting opened.
Mhm.
You've audibly heard voices. The equipment goes off like crazy. And what I like about the equipment, a lot of the stuff we use, like the EMF, there's no power to the building. So for the EMF stuff to be working, I'm a little bit more confident in me saying that
Oh,
it.
definitely, especially with no power.
Yeah,
I
we've had like the K2 meter we've put inside a china hutch with a bunch of masonic items, and that'll start going off. I've had the tripwire go off multiple times in different areas of the lodge. I've run it down hallways. I've put it over the altars, and then there's times where nothing goes off. So yeah, it just kind of depends. But yeah, having the EMF stuff going off with the no K2 is really a cool
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, when that is because that's like one of my pet peeves. I'm always the one that when I see people pull out the K2, I walk over and hit it off all the I'm like, "Well, this is why you're getting hits right now." And because I mean, when I was first learning, yeah, we didn't even use that. We had a gas meter,
Hmm.
like the old dial that, it ran kind of on dials.
Yeah.
And it didn't really have like all the lights and fanciness. And I mean, I still would use that, I think, if I had it, because I think for me, it was more reliable in those types of locations because it didn't have as much interference from electronics.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that's great though. And I always go crazy when I see the K2 go off in a place that I know has no power.
Hmm.
Because it's like, well, what's it feeding off of? If there's no power in here, where is it coming from? So that's really, exciting. And you guys have events or anything that you do, or is it just teams can reach out to you and
Yeah, we're actually, this is my first year doing events, and they're actually being really well received. So, the Boyd House has three different investigations from two different paranormal teams. One's the Mini Ghost team, and one's the Chasing Paranormal.
Mhm.
Those events actually sold out really quickly, so we were pretty happy about that. But we are actually hosting a paranormal convention in Boyd September 27th of this year, 2025. So we're going to be having a lot of
That's
psychic
pretty cool.
paranormals for speakers. We got some workshops of people doing like a seance and psychic readings and paranormal investigations with earthly imprint paranormal. So it's just going to be just a lot of fun. So people can check out our website at theboydhouse217.com for more information about that.
Awesome. Yeah, I was gonna ask you that. How do people find you? Because I know I didn't get a chance to do. I try to do research on things before I get on, and I didn't even get a chance this time because I was just so bogged down with our business. We're small business owners besides me doing this and the paranormal, and I just finished a book. So it's just like I've been so bogged down with all of that. I'm like my this week I'm winging it
Yeah.
because I just did not have an opportunity to sit down. And I mean, I know you're in Minnesota, and I'm like, why do these cool places have to be so far away?
Well,
Like,
that's
I know we have a lot here too, but I mean, I places I haven't been before, and I think it's because you guys are far away. That's why.
Yeah, yeah, we say the same thing, but yeah. And then we are doing an event too at the lodge, and that one's not sold out. We're halfway sold out. So May 3rd, we're doing investigation with Eternal Paranormal at the lodge. So that'll
That's
be
pretty awesome.
yep, 6 p.m. till midnight. So people get in. We're getting limited for just 20 people to get in and experience some of the paranormal and do we play with the equipment and such. So
I think that's always awesome because I think it really helps. I just did an event last week in a private home for people to come out and learn a little bit because I think people are intrigued by the paranormal, but I think they also have a fear or they don't know where to look to find people that are into it. Like in our area, especially, we used to have multiple teams, but I think they, gotten older and got away from it.
yeah, and the stuff we're doing too is really helps funding, for getting these buildings back to restoration. So when we got the Boyd House, we put a lot of work into it. We had to put a new roof on it. We redid it back to the 1900s. We had to fix some things. There's still some things that need to be fixed on. So that's why with the convention we kind of put that on because we need a lot of smaller repairs now that need to get done. And then same with the lodge. Now she's an old one. She's got good bare bones, but needs a lot of work, a lot of restoration. So having the people coming in for the investigations, via the events or just the private people coming in to do the investigations is just tremendous help.
And that's what I always tell people, like, like a lot of people are like, well, why go to these locations? And I said, because one, we're able to live history. I'm lucky. I live very close to Gettysburg. I can go whenever I want. And I could do a modge podge of ghost hunting, history, all of that in one. I always call Gettysburg one stop shopping. And but people forget like a lot of these locations, if it's not for the people that go out and attend the events and do the things that you guys wouldn't be able to do the things that you're able to do to keep bring these things back to the way they should be.
Yeah, and I just love the history too, and I think a lot of people who are into the paranormal they love the history too because I can go to a place and I can just step in there and go, man, this was the place back in the day. You can just imagine how this hospital was running and functioning, or the family that lived in this house, or just kind of just take a step back in time, and it's just really really cool to be there.
Yeah, I always say that about Trans Allegheny. When I go into Trans Allegheny, I always say like this place must have been because it was, supposed to be a model hospital. at the time, the way it was built, the way it was, and unfortunately, like everything else, it got taken advantage of and became something not so good. So, but like when I look at places like that, I try to look back and think of what it would have been like when it was in its heyday, or when it was first opened, or when it was first built, when the people that are most likely the spirits there were there.
Hmm.
And, like, and I know you were saying, I know I heard Mildred. Was it Mildred?
Many.
Minnie, that's what it was. I knew it was an M. And I think that, I think it's interesting because you know their names, and you interact with them, and you treat them like, they're part of who you are.
Oh,
And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. And that, we do that anywhere we go. It's just about respect. Our team kind of tends to focus more on life than death. Uh,
Mhm.
we figure nobody wants to talk about how they died, and most of the time we know. So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
quite compassionate. So we like to focus more on, like, hey, what was your favorite thing to do? Like, did you have a favorite book? Did you have a favorite, just to find out, just in general, what that person was all about. And that experience too, moving forward with having my own location, I work on that. So if they tell me they want something, or even if I'm watching, I'd love to see what other people capture at either location. So for them sending me videos. So if they get stuff, that's indicating anything that they want something, I'm there to get it for them, if I possibly can. Obviously, there's certain
Right.
little.
Probably things like you won't be able to get the foods, most likely, for some of them that were popular back then. Now, something that I have done and have experienced is something that, some of the investigators in this area have called like ghost excavating, which is kind of like peeling away the layers and the years. So do you guys ever do like reenacting in the house from that period to try to see if that would give you more interaction?
We have done, yeah, different things. Like when we went to the Indiana State, we dressed as doctors and nurses, to see if we would get a little bit more interaction. I didn't say notice that we did or did not. Other asylums, I have dressed up as doctors and nurses. We've dressed up as nuns, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, we actually got a really good EVP that said, "Are you Catholic?" When we were there, and so yeah, so we've done that. We've dressed up in inmate outfits when
Okay.
we've done jails, and we've left one of our investigators back there by himself dressed as an inmate. So, and I can't say did it trigger anything more than it would have. I don't know, but it's just kind of, I feel like maybe the spirit would be more willing to come forward to be, they probably aren't like, oh, that's a person in a costume. Maybe sometimes they know, but maybe they don't. Maybe they're like, oh,
Well, yeah, because I know when we were at Malvern, that was something we did there on the side that was, the group home or nursing home, like near the nurses' station there. We actually had people, like a person in a wheelchair pretending to be a patient, and, someone pretending to be a nurse. And, he was being really rambunctious. And, it was interesting because we noticed ourselves that we were getting certain things were triggering more
hmm,
especially when he became like a combative patient,
yeah,
where he got louder and he started giving the nurse a little bit of a hard time.
hmm,
And it just seemed like, things started getting a little off the charts. And yeah, we had a seance there in the attic where we literally had a guy lifted up off the ground and pulled back into the
oh
windowsill.
wow,
Yeah, it was, yeah, it was pretty crazy. Like, I'd never seen anything. I wouldn't have believed it if there wasn't the fact that there was a room full of people downstairs that watched it happen.
hmm,
Because like he jumped up and he started yelling and he took off, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't believe it. I just thought he wanted to leave. So I was like,
that's
I don't know what
crazy.
happened. And everybody's like, oh my God, you guys need to leave now. You need to come back downstairs now. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, is there anything that you guys like to do in particular to try, or do you just try a little bit of everything to interact?
Oh, we just a little bit of everything, because what works one day isn't going to work another day. So you just got to kind of get the feel of what's they're into that particular day, if they have any energy. We've been using the Estes method quite a bit. Our teammate Teresa, for some reason, has been very gifted with the ability to do an Estes. I actually have never seen anybody do it quite like her. Like we literally have conversations like you and I are having right now. There's no lull in the conversation. It's constant back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
That's always exciting. I actually just had an opportunity to do that in the hotel we were staying in Gettysburg back in September.
Hmm.
So it was the first time I had ever done it because I'd taken, a break from any investigating for a while. And so when we went out there, I never had tech stuff. I never had spirit boxes. I never had pods. I never had any of that. And it's the last year I've been slowly collecting pieces. So I got a good set of headphones and I decided that was the first thing I wanted to do. So it was pretty interesting because I've always had, like, way back to the old shack hacks. Is what the first spirit box I ever used was a shack hack. You get it at Radio Shack and you cut stuff off of it, and that was like one of the best pieces of equipment I ever owned. And we actually had, where mass grave of Southern soldiers were in Gettysburg. We literally were able to hear someone, with a Southern drawl talking through that little shack hack box, like saying, "Thank you, ma'am," and "No problem," and, things like it was like, "Wow, wait a minute." And then we didn't know at the time that it was actually a mass burial site until we actually talked to someone that worked there, and they said, "Oh, yeah, this was like a mass burial site for the South." And I'm like, "Oh, well, that makes sense then why we were getting a Southern draw."
Yeah, yeah. I just love the spirit box, the science behind it. You get the different voices, like you said, the Southern draw. We've gotten that. Swear words that are never going to be on the radio. Uh,
Yep.
yeah, just it's just amazing. I just love it. My favorite story about the spirit box is some people are like, "Oh, it's just radio chatter," but we actually investigated a private home, and the guy who owned the house, he was a very smart man. He had like 75 different letters after his name, PhD,
Oh,
and
wow.
like all like he gave me his card, and he was a professor at a university. So very, very smart man. Understood the science behind the spirit box. So the our entire family was experiencing stuff except for him. So he thought they were just all nuts and making things up. He was never really a believer of ghosts. But the house he lived in was with Captain Jenks, who was the riverboat captain in Stillwater. And he passed away in the home, and that was his home that he was living in. So I was running the spirit box, and I said, "Whose home is this?" And plain as day, it said Captain Jenks. And I made him a believer of ghosts right after that.
Wow, that is, and I always find that, very interesting because I know we were doing a session at one time and I literally heard my father's voice.
Hmm.
Now, my father had a very distinct voice because he was the child of, Irish immigrants who had very thick brogues. So, and he had a very distinct, and I thought maybe I was crazy, but then someone else that was there that knew my dad literally said, "Did you hear your father? Because I just heard your father." And I said, "Okay, so I'm not crazy." Like, because you do experience that sometimes. You think, well, maybe I really wasn't hearing that. And I always look to validate it with someone.
Yeah, we had that too. We had a business we were doing investigation on. It used to be a hardware store. And I was just kind of asking, like, what kind of things did you sell? And they would say, broom or whatever they would say. But, like, and I said, what did this used to be? And it's like the hardware store. And it was always the same guy answering. And we had the video out for a while. And about 6 months later, I got a contact from a lady that's wanted to know if there were more information because she said that that was her grandfather's hardware store and that was his voice. She
Oh,
recognized,
wow.
she heard it, so she wanted to know if we had gotten any other responses. But she was very distinct that was her grandfather. So
That's pretty cool. Now, is there any locations that you wouldn't want to go back to? Like anything, any locations that really scared you or, made you decide, like, hey, I don't know if I ever.
well, I've never been to the Sally house, and I'm never going to the Sally house. I'll tell
Okay.
you that. Just way too much negativity I've heard from it, But then sometimes I'm like, well, look at all the people who go there, nothing bad happens. But it's like, I don't know. I feel if you get a vibe about something, you probably just shouldn't go, whether
Right.
whether it has the validity of it or not. Because we've gone to places, that supposedly has more of a negative um, connection to it, where we're like, okay, nobody's going to leave anybody's side, we're just sticking with each other. And then next thing you know, nothing's going on. So we're all kind of just disappearing all on our own, and not, and we're not getting that negative vibe. So, um, yeah, but that one, that's kind of one I wouldn't go to. But we also,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I never now see, I haven't even thought about that one. Like, my thing was always Bobby Mackey's, but now
Oh
that's
yeah,
gone.
I've
Now
been
it's
twice.
gone, and but, the stories kinda, like, freaked me out. And the other one, and it's another place that I've been dreaming about a lot lately, is Waverly Hills.
Okay, yep, I've been there too. I love it.
And I've wanted to go there, but there's something that keeps me away.
Hmm.
But now, I started dreaming about the place again. So I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, man, I'm gonna have to try to find." And I had multiple people that said, "Well, if you wanna come, we're gonna be there on this date, you could come with us." And I'm like, "No, I really don't want to, man. You don't understand because." And I don't rea and the Bel Air House is one, but at the same time, I wanna go back.
Hmm.
It's like, I know what I experienced there and what I felt, and, but at the same time, I wanna go back and see if it was the location itself or if it was the people that were at the location at the time.
Right, right.
And that's the type, like, because I always said, "Oh, I hate prisons. I'll never do prisons. But, I'd rather do insane asylums than prisons." And I ended up I don't even know, I think 4 or 5 times now I've been at West Virginia Penn, and I go back. And if someone says, "You wanna go?" "Yep, I'll go." Because I think each time I go, I peel another layer off there and get more information for myself, and I think that's what keeps me coming back. But, other than that, the only other place that, and it isn't even because of the location, it was just because of the town itself, was Villisca.
Oh, I love Melissa. We had some class that was honestly, though, I will tell you, that was our very first place we ever went as a, what I say, the pay to play places.
Right.
That was our very first one. I absolutely terrified, because that was our first place. But we got some incredible EVPs. I have never actually captured EVPs of two spirits talking to each other. So one of the kids says, "You want to play?" and the other kid says, "No way." We got one of the older boys. I can't remember his name, but he said, "No, Lena, no." So she must have been gonna go do something. So to get her voice, or I mean, her name being said. So just a lot of things. We're like, "Is anybody home?" And you get a kid answering, "We're right here." So just some really most incredible EVVs that we ever captured. We had the REM pod go off a couple times, and yeah, it was just a crazy, crazy night. I was just
What
terrified. It was
and
so,
I'm always fascinated because, like, Malvern is, like, a really cool place to me, and I've heard a lot of things happen at Villisca that kinda carry over into Malvern.
hmm.
And now which is odd, but when I was at Malvern, I actually had a very strong feeling that the person who committed the murder stayed at the manor.
And possibly because I think, wasn't it like a hotel or something back
Yes,
in
and
the day?
it was right off the railroad tracks from Villisca, and because when we got there, there was no I thought there was people in the manor, and you could literally see in the upstairs of the part that was not where the care home was built on, but the actual part that was the home, you could see a curtain moving back and someone, like, looking out at us. So I thought it was the people we were meeting there.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then all of a sudden they come up from the other side of town and I'm like, "Weren't you guys in the house?" And they're like, "No." And I'm like, "Well, then someone's peeking at us." And when I went up to look, that's when I got this overwhelming feeling that there was a relationship between Malvern and Villisca.
Hmm.
And, and I don't know, it was but Villisca didn't bother me. It was just, I don't know, it could have been the time of year we were there or what, but it just seemed like, people in town weren't too keen on visitors.
Well, it's so busy there, like all the time. Like even while we were investigating, people just driving by and taking pictures, and I'm just like, wow, like this place has been in existence for a long time, but still the draw.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
so
one of
many
the
people
hot
here.
spots, like,
Yeah.
that is one of the places, like, when you think it's, like, Gettysburg, it's, the Queen Mary, the Winchester House, the places that you think and, Trans-Allegheny, those big places like that are, like, a draw because West Virginia still sells out trips.
Mhm.
When people are doing investigations there, they still sell them out. They have the big paranormal convention there that's, like, huge.
Yeah.
And it's just like, those places, and that's why I wanna highlight smaller locations, because I think people all wanna go to these bigger locations and, they forget that there's other places, like your places, like Wildwood, like, some of these other smaller locations that are owned by regular people or fellow investigators that just want to keep the history alive and to keep, research for research.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot more of the smaller, like you say, the smaller venues and newer places popping up, which is good to see that to get a little bit of variety. Because I know when I first started, it was like a handful of places. Now there's so many, but you don't always hear about them, because we'll travel around to a lot of different paranormal conventions just promoting both of our locations. And,
Right.
it goes from one extreme to, oh, I've always heard of the Boyd House, or I've never even heard of you guys.
Yeah,
So
I didn't hear of it until we became friends on Facebook. I had never heard, but again, you're a further from me, so of course I
right,
hear about the places that are closer to me, like Hinsdale, like Wildwood,
right.
places like that. I don't now I do have a friend that lives in Missouri, and so I know of what is it, McIntyre Villa, I think it's
Yep,
called? Yeah,
yep,
I
yep.
know, and I'm friends with Stephanie on
Yeah, that's
Facebook,
absolutely
and
true.
yeah, and so I've heard of that, but it's only because, I'm friends with them. It's not because, someone said, "Hey," well, my friend goes out there a lot.
Mhm.
And so she was actually just there over the weekend for her birthday. And so, I mean, I know like that's where I've heard of it from.
Right.
But like if it's past Ohio, very rarely do I hear about it. Like, it's like there's a line that goes down the East Coast and, it's not on our side.
Mhm.
I always say our side of the Mississippi. Then I never hear about it. Like I know the Winchester House because it's something, I've researched heavily. But like some of these smaller locations, that's why I'm out there shooting like, hey guys, like I want to know what's out there because someday my husband's gonna retire and I'm getting a motorhome and we're just gonna go.
Yeah, there you go, travel
He
around.
yeah,
Yep.
he's now do you get into other things? Because I know some of us like I'm into cryptozoology along with the paranormal. Now, do you guys ever delve into like, the ufology or other stuff like that along with doing your work in the paranormal?
No, not really. I mean, I am fascinated by all that cryptid and stuff. It's very interesting, very fascinating. Nothing that I pursue as a, hobby like I do
Right.
with the paranormal, but it's always interesting to hear people's stories about UFOs or Bigfoots and things like that. So, but yeah, nothing I wouldn't be like I personally wouldn't go out investigating.
You wouldn't go out on a Bigfoot hunt, huh?
No, no, I don't even like
I'm gonna be doing my first one. My friend is a big Bigfoot researcher, and she's promised to drag me along into the state park this year in a camping, situation to go looking for Bigfoot. So I'm pretty excited about that. But other than that, like, well, Mothman, I'm totally obsessed with.
Mhm.
But, I my husband's a UFO guy, so that's why I always ask people because I get it from him, because of him being so into, UFOs and all that stuff, and then me with the paranormal, we're always going back and forth because he's not a big believer in the paranormal, but he'll believe in UFOs, and I'm, sometimes get tossed up between the 2. Well, I don't know what's out there, so I'm not gonna say anything.
Mhm.
And before we go, can you give everybody a little bit of information on how they can find you? And, if they want to book, how they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, so for the Masonic Lodge, you can find us on the Facebook or our website is haunted 1861masonic.com. And then it's got all our information on the website, a little bit of history, some photographs, and how to book. Boyd House, same thing. You can find us on Facebook or on the website boydhouse217.com. So again, a lot of information, history, little videos there, how to book. There's also a real lot of information too about the upcoming convention as well.
Awesome. And I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking about your place because, like I said, I want to highlight a lot of the smaller locations because I think you guys deserve just as much love as the big ones. So,
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really had enjoyed talking with you.
no problem. And like I said, guys, I will have links in the description for the podcast and on our YouTube channel. So check them out and give them a shout out and go see them if you're in that area because or travel there. Because let me tell you, it's beautiful country driving out that way. So especially if you're from the East Coast, it just gets flat. So so guys, until next time, thank you. From our friends at Got Knockers, Strange Knocks Magazine. Strange Knocks Magazine is your ultimate companion for exploring the enigmatic corners of our world. Delve into the shadows with us as we uncover the mysteries surrounding cryptids like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster, and examine the tantalizing possibility of extraterrestrial life visiting Earth. Our pages are filled with compelling true crime stories that defy conventional explanation, alongside mind-bending conspiracy theories that challenge the status quo. Whether you're a seasoned skeptic or a curious believer, Strange Knocks Magazine invites you to expand your horizons and entertain the unexplained. With captivating articles, expert interviews, and reader submissions, each issue promises to spark your imagination and thrill your sense of wonder. Join us in our quest to illuminate the unknown, one strange knock at a time. From our friends at Got Knockers, Strange Knocks Magazine, read the description for further information. Be a Moss Healing Collective in Milton, Pennsylvania, your one-stop shop for crystals, candles, herbs, books, divination tools, self-care, and healing. Amos offers a multitude of classes for your metaphysical and witchy needs. Check them out on Broadway Street in Milton, Pennsylvania. Amos Healing Collective. Look for more information in the description.